So, to revisit reconnaissance, remember that reconnaissance is a preparatory phase. This is where he's just going to get some information. He's going to find out as much as possible about his target, and then he's actually going to perform a little scanning, and he's actually going to see if he can't go in and take a look at the different information on the network itself. So, what really is footprinting? Footprinting is basically when you're going to try to get a blueprint of the different security profile of an organization. And usually you're going to do this in a very slow, methodical kind of process. That way you can make sure that you get as much information as possible. And it's one of the 3 pre-attack phases. The others are the scanning and then the enumeration as well. So an attacker is probably going to spend about 90% of his time profiling the organization, and then actually only about 10% of his time launching the attack. And that's because getting the information will help tell us exactly what kind of attack we want to do. So footprinting results in an organizational profile. Maybe you have a network map, maybe you'll have exactly different characteristics about the physical organization. All of this information can be used to actually footprint a different company. So what's the methodology that we're going to use, or that the hacker is going to use? First off, we're going to go ahead and look for some initial information. In other words, just find out some basic information about the network itself or the company itself. Then we're going to take a look at what network range are they using. We're going to see if we can find any active machines. After we find the machines, then we'll look at any open ports or any access points that are available to us. We'll try to, based upon that information, detect exactly what operating systems they have. Once we know what operating system we have, then we're going to look for different services that are running on those ports, or well-known services that would be running on that operating system. And then that's going to enable us to actually create a map of the network itself. So, how do we get some of the early information? Well, commonly we could do something like a domain name lookup. Or we could actually look at the different locations that a company has. We might even look for different contact information. In other words, what's their telephone number? What area are they located at? What's their mailing address? Some of the different sources we can go for, well, we can go for open source information. We can do a basic who is, or even an NS lookup on the company itself. And then we're going to take a look at some different hacking tools that will do this for us. For instance, Sam Spade is a great tool to use to get information. So how do you find the company's URL? Well, it's easy enough. Just simply go to Google. Once you go to Google, type in the company's name in the search engine, and then you're probably going to get back the company's URL. Now you also want to try to find out what is their internal URL. And sometimes you can figure this out just by using different logical pieces. For instance, they might have a intranet.targetcompany.com, or maybe developers.targetcompany.com, or maybe even portal.targetcompany.com. Once you know this information, you can try to actually access this information just by typing in the URL. So for example, beta.example.com. Once you know what their website is or what their URL is, then you want to try to extract an archive of the website. Now you can do this from a lot of different sites that are available to you. One of them is www.archive.org. So for example, if you go and looked up www.eccouncil.org, you can see when were updates made to the website and how those updates were made and how often those updates are made. Once you have that, you could also go and take a snapshot of those different ones. For instance, the Wayback Machine is a commonly used site, and they actually keep track of different changes in the websites, depending upon how long the company's been around. You may or may not have several years to go back. Some sites actually would go all the way back to 1996. You can also, as I said, use Google. And this helps you find not just the company's URL, but maybe company information, maybe news releases or press releases, or other information about the actual infrastructure itself. Sometimes you'll find different white papers or different technical documents that may have been released by the company for their customers. You can also do a people search. Now, people search is good because this lets you find personal information. And you can do this through a couple different sites. You could go to people.yahoo.com or maybe even www.intellius.com. Here it lets you get all kinds of information. For instance, you might be able to get their residential addresses, different contact information, date of birth, change of location, all kinds of this information. Now, why is that information good? Well, it's quite simple. If you know a lot of this information, especially about the people that work at the company, then you have a good idea of what to try. For instance, with date of birth, how many people do you think that actually use that as their password? So you want to gather as much information as possible. You can also get satellite pictures of private residences as well as the business itself. So here's a people search website here. This is intellius.com. You see you can type in Joe Smith here and it gives his different aliases, what the address is listed, his date of birth, his age, and you even have other reports that you could pick on. For instance, his address history, different civil judgments, different relatives, and so on. Here we could pull up a picture of Joe's house. So you can actually pull up not just the information about Joe himself, but you can actually see where he lives or where the company might be located. You can also footprint a company by going through different job sites. For instance, you could go to www.jobsdb.com. Now, you can look for information like what are the job requirements, what are the employee profiles. This allows you to find out information like hardware information or software information. We need somebody who's a specialist on Linux, or we need somebody who knows Windows Server 2003. This can all be obtained from different job sites. So for instance, here's a shot of jobsdb.com, and you can see a lot of the different information you can gather. Here we have the different organization itself. You have a job description here. It's located in Long Beach, California, and you have the different profile itself. So all of this information becomes very critical when you're trying to just find out as much as possible about an organization.